You need to know the basic theories of emotion. Remember the James Lange theory, the theory of William James, says that you need to be aware of the reactions of the body before you can experience the emotion. Which means that you do not feel afraid and then you run. Instead, you run and you feel afraid because you perceive yourself running and your heart beating faster and all those changes to run. You don't fight because you're angry. You feel angry because you're fighting. So the fighting occurs first. You're aware of the fighting and all the changes in the body while you're fighting, and they constitute the anger. It's like putting the cart ahead of the horse. That is one theory. The second theory is the one of Cannon and Barr. And it argues that James is wrong, that you do not need to be aware of the changes in the body to have an emotion. Instead, an emotion occurs immediately. And the behavior occurs practically together with the emotion. So you feel afraid and you run. You feel angry and you fight. So the emotion and behavior occur practically together. That is the much closer to common sense to the way most people experience the emotion. Of course, Cannon was wrong in assuming that the thalamus was the center of emotion. Later it was shown that the limbic system instead was a much better candidate. That the Papez-McLean theory, that the limbic system adds the emotional element to the experience. But Papez would have agreed with Cannon that you feel the emotion and then you run. You have the emotion. You don't have to feel your body changes in order to have emotion. An important theory to remember is the cognitive theory, or the two-factor theory of Schachter and Singer. That theory says essentially that you experience an emotion that makes sense in the situation that you perceive it. So you have to take into account the cognitive context. The intensity of the emotion is related to the physiological arousal. But the kind of emotion depends on what you perceive is going on. So the same physiological arousal at the ball game you would interpret as excitement. The same physiological arousal at a funeral you could experience as sadness. If somebody is trying to hurt you, the same excitement you would experience as hate. If somebody is extra nice to you, you might experience it as love. So the kind of emotion depends on how you see what's going on. Another theory you want to remember is Isar's theory, facial feedback theory. The facial expressions can produce an emotion. So if you smile, you start feeling happy. If you make an angry expression, you start feeling angry. And then the combined theory that puts it all together also gives some role to the frontal lobes. Remember the Phineas Gage case that Foreman in the railroad construction team, where there was an explosion and a metal bar went through his brain and severed the connections between the frontal lobes and the limbic system. And Phineas Gage, after this accident, had emotions that were a roller coaster, constantly changing. He had no control of these emotions. So it seems that the frontal lobes can program the limbic system. The limbic system produces the emotion, and the hypothalamus can control the expression of the emotion, and also controls the endocrine system, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and so on, and the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic part, remember, is what gets you ready for action. Now, one emotion in particular is important to remember because it is found in many forms of mental illness, which is anxiety. Anxiety tends to be a fear of something that you cannot specify. You are anxious when you are afraid that something is going to happen, but you cannot really put your finger on exactly what or exactly when. Then we looked at motivation. Motivation is a study of the why people do motivation, the cause of the behavior. You have physiological drives, which are things like hunger, thirst, and sex, etc. We didn't do much with them because you already know the most important thing from our discussion of the brain, namely that physiological drives are controlled by the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that controls it. Then we looked at stimulus motives, or stimulus needs. You need stimulation if not, you are in a state of sensory deprivation. You need to be in contact with something maybe soft and cuddly. There is a need for physical contact. That's what was tested by the experiments of Harlow with the surrogate mothers, where the baby rhesus monkey always preferred the soft and cuddly mother over the wire mother, even if the wire mother fed. And then there are arousal theories that argue that there is an optimal level of stimulation for every person. There is an amount of stimulation that's just right for you. If you have that amount of stimulation, you're happy, you're functioning well. If there is a lot less than your optimal, then you feel bored. And at the extreme, of course, you have sensory deprivation. If you have too much more than your optimal, then you become confused. And at the extreme, you have a stimulant overload. You can't function. A person from a small town goes to New York City. He's overloaded. He's not functioning very well. Then we looked at a number of learned motives. Particularly, we looked at achievement motivation and also affiliation. Affiliation is the need to be with other people, the need for social interaction with people. Achievement is the need to overcome obstacles and accomplish things. The person who climbs a mountain because it's there, and I'm going to be able to climb, and I'm going to get to the top. Well, he has strong achievement motivation. The person who climbs the ladder in a company until he becomes the CEO, well, obviously he has high achievement motivation. The opposite of achievement motivation is the motivation to avoid failure. And those two are sort of related. It's important that the need to achieve, the need to succeed, be at least a little stronger than the need to avoid failure. Otherwise, you constantly are trying to avoid putting yourself in any situation where you could accomplish something. And then you attribute any success to luck, if you're dominated by the need to avoid failure. If you're dominated by the need to succeed, you have strong achievement motivation. Then every time you succeed, it reinforces your knowledge that you're capable. So you become more confident. And if you fail, you attribute that to lack of effort, so you try harder anyway.